All right, we're back and we're going to talk about health habits. So, the younger we are when we start to do healthy things, the bigger impact that has across our lifespan. So let's talk about some things that can help our health and that can harm our health. Substance use. It's really rare for people in the 25 to 65-year-old range to be using illicit drugs. I mean, that's sort of the purview of the adolescent and the young adult. And when we look at this chart, we see that, our illicit drug use really peaks in young adulthood. And then by the time we are into regular adulthood, it's really tapering off. So there's a small percentage who engage in illicit drug use in actual, adulthood proper. So that's good. Here we have illicit drugs in the top bar, and then we have marijuana being, it's legal in some states and not in other states, obviously, but it is absolutely the most common, drug use. We have to combine everything together to get a bar that's bigger than marijuana. And then what we're seeing, and you're probably aware of, is a lot of people using prescription drugs against the prescription, right? And particularly things like opioids and stuff like that. And then we have, a very small subset who use cocaine or hallucinogens or inhalants or heroin. So those are very uncommon. But when you're talking about, 0.3 people per million in the United States using heroin, that's still a large number of people. I think it's actually numbers are in millions. So I think that's 0.3 of a million. That is using heroin. That's a lot of people in the United States. That's a lot of people because we have 330 million people in this country. That converts to a lot of people who are using. And so we do have a lot of people who are doing it, but luckily for most people, adulthood is not the time for this. Marijuana use, here we have the percent who have used marijuana in the past month by age. And again, it tapers off as we go into adulthood, but it is not tapering off as rapidly as like illicit drugs do. I mean, we have 10% of people who are 65 and over who report using marijuana. So marijuana is kind of getting to the place where sort of alcohol is, right? Where it's legal in a lot of places. And so a lot of people have been using it. It's nowhere near as popular. I mean, it's probably half as popular as alcohol. So prescription drug abuse, this is broken down by the orange bars are metropolitan areas. The tan bars are people who live in urbanized areas, but they're not metropolitan. And then the blue bars are rural, just to kind of show you, like, a lot of times people think about stereotypical ideas about who's using prescription drugs based on location. And it kind of shows you that urbanized is, you're seeing more at every age group prescription drug abuse going on in the urbanized areas, but it's not that much more. It looks like it's kind of an equal opportunity thing where people are using prescription drug use incorrectly. But it's mostly going on among the 12 to 25 year olds, right? 26 and older, you see all of a sudden like hardly anyone is doing that. So full-fledged adults are not abusing prescription drugs at the rates that younger people are. Please note the y-axis though. I mean, we're maxing out at 4% of any age group who are using these. So, and keep in mind also, by the way, when you see age 12 to 17, you might be thinking, I don't know, oxycodone or something, but remember that includes things like Adderall and Ritalin that it might have been actually prescribed to them or to their friend, and they're using it for recreational purposes. Tobacco use. All right, so over here on the right, we have our rates of tobacco product use by age. And what they've done is a stacked bar. So you've got the 18 to 24-year-olds in the white at the bottom. Then you've got the 25 to 44, and then the 45 to 64. That's what we really want to look at. We don't really want to look at the above 65, which is the darkest blue. So ignore the white at the bottom, ignore the dark blue at the top, and let's try and focus on those, sort of medium shades of blue. Those will be our age brackets. And if you start at the left, that would be the percent that use any kind of tobacco product. And then we have the next row over is any combustible tobacco products. So that could be any of the next three bars, which is the first one is cigars, cigarillos, filtered little cigars, anything that is in the cigar family. The next one over is some kind of regular tobacco smoking pipe. The next one over is a water pipe or a hookah. So these are all the different kinds of combustible tobacco product. And then we have e-cigarettes, and then we have smokeless tobacco. Now this chart is the most recent one I could find, but we know for certain that e-cigarette use is really growing. And we saw that it started growing in adolescence about 2017. And those adolescents are now, I'm doing 7 plus, let's say they were 17. They'd be 24. They're starting to move into our full adult age bracket. And so I think what we're going to see is that the full adult age bracket using e-cigarettes is going to be going bigger as those adolescents are maturing into adulthood. Alcohol, like I mentioned before, is the most popular of all the substances for use that are on this list. Not on this list that could be construed as substance would be things like coffee or other caffeinated beverages, but we're not going to talk about that. So I just thought it would be fun. I just had this conversation with my mom and my son the other day because I bought these little bottles. I think it's Sutter Home makes these little bottles of what appear to be a single serving of wine. And I use them. My mom likes a type of wine that nobody else likes. She likes it kind of puckery, and the rest of us like it sweet. So I thought, well, I'll get her this kind of puckery Chardonnay kind of wine that she likes. And then I can also use it for cooking. And that way I don't have to open an entire bottle of wine, right? So I was making a wine sauce the other day, and my mom was here, and I go, okay, you can drink the leftover of whatever I need for this. And so I needed 3/4 of a cup. I go, I don't know if this will be enough because it's a single serving. And everybody knows, a single serving of wine is 5 ounces. See on my little chart, 5 ounces. Well, it turned out that my little single so-called serving of wine contained 13 ounces. It was reported as milliliters, and being an American, I couldn't tell what that was on the side. So I'm like, I don't know what 187 milliliters is. Well, now I know it's about 13 ounces. And I was a little bit floored. That's like 2.5 servings in what clearly looks like a single serving bottle. It's not uncommon to be overserved wine or to be overserved beer. You get a 16-ounce beer instead of the 12 ounces, which is what's considered a single serving. And I said to my mom, this is 2.5 servings right here. And my mom goes, I would call that one. So, you get pulled over by the police and you're like, yep, I only had one glass of wine today. Well, it was 13 ounces. that was 2.5 servings. For women to metabolize the alcohol and not be actually, impaired by it, you would want to pace yourself to one of these measured drinks per hour. So 1 5-ounce glass of wine per hour for a woman, for her to be able to confidently then drive and not be impaired. Men get 2. So because they have faster metabolisms, their livers are bigger, there's different things that allow men to filter it out faster. So men get to have 2, but women get 1. My mom would have said I only drank 1, honestly, and it would have been 2.5 drinks. So it's kind of, I think, a little bit shocking. Like I honestly thought I had bought a single serving thing. Research has been showing that all of these alcohols are basically equivalent as far as their healthful benefits. It used to be believed that there was something super special about it, especially like red wine, that it had these, flavonoids and all these things that were so great about it. But it turns out it may actually literally be the alcohol that is the beneficial component. And 1 to 2 drinks per day, depending on if you're male or female, seems to be what's needed or beneficial for health. It helps to reduce your bad cholesterol and raise your levels of good cholesterol. It seems to be associated with reduced cardiovascular disease, reduced risk of stroke. The bad news is most people don't drink 1 to 2 if they're going to have drinks in the evening. Like I said, you pour yourself a glass of wine and you actually drank 2.5. And then also 20% of adults binge drink at least once a year, which is defined for men as 5 drinks in a single event. And for women, that's defined as 3 drinks in a single event. I am recording this. Today is February 9th, 2020. And so this Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday. Probably 100% of the adults who report that they binge drink at least once a year are doing it coming up this Sunday, right? Like that's a really big, heavy drinking. If not this Sunday, they're going to do it on 4th of July or New Year's Eve or Labor Day or Memorial Day, or, one of these big, probably on one of these big holidays when we all have the day off and we all think it's okay and we're just going to, sort of be unrestrained. So 20% of adults binge drink at least once a year. And that's another one of these situations where a lot of my students are like, wait, 5 drinks is a binge for a man? 3 drinks is a binge for a woman? Hold on. I did not, hold on. I did not know that was the definition of a binge. So some of us have, I guess maybe, as is everything here in the U.S., everything bigger. We're like, I didn't know that 3 makes me a binger. I didn't know that. And maybe some of these rules are just a teeny tiny bit rigid for defining something as a binge that rigidly. I'm not sure. Another big health issue is our nutrition. Here's a map that shows the percent of U.S. adults consuming 3 or more vegetables per day. And, you want to be in one of the darkest blue states if you want to be proud of your friends and neighbors for how well they eat. But for those of us in Washington, we're one step down from that. Oregon's doing a little bit better than us. But the best performing state has we'll just call it 45% of their adults reporting that they consume 3 or more vegetables a day. That's not super good for our nutrition. We should be eating more vegetables than that. As we all know, obesity increases the risk of every chronic disease, and COVID really laid that bare. Also, it increases our risk of a bad, experience from COVID. Obesity, it puts us at greater risk. Metabolism does in fact decrease across adulthood. There has been some disagreement among medical professionals about this. A lot of medical professionals say you're just eating too much. It's not that your metabolism has slowed. Others, other measurements of metabolism that has to do with oxygen exchange and other measures of how fast you're turning things over in your body show that for you across time, your metabolism will decrease. It will slow, and it'll make it harder for you to keep weight off. This is a chart that shows the prevalence of self-reported obesity. So this isn't necessarily objectively, we weighed and measured you and told you were obese. This is the prevalence of the person saying, I am overweight or I'm obese. And so the yellow ones mean that somewhere between 25 and 30% of the population in that state self-report that they are obese. Colorado is the only... I think Washington, D.C. also claims to be in the 20 to 25% are obese. The dark red ones are more than 55% of the population self-report that they are obese. So we have, clearly an issue going on, especially in a, east versus west kind of way and a north versus south kind of way. We have, differences going on. Florida is in the lower weight. And you might say, oh, well, they have a bunch of beaches. Well, so does Texas. So there's a lot of things that, cultural facts and dietary things that go along with this. Obesity rates continue to trend up in the U.S. So we're seeing, year over year. We start at the bottom with 99 to 1,000, to 2,000. The top row, most recent data that they have is 2017, 2018. And we started at the millennium with about 30% of the adult population being obese, and by 2018, 42% is obese. So we clearly are gaining weight. When we look at men versus women, we see that about 37% of women are categorized as obese, whereas 35% of men are categorized as obese. But look at the overweight difference. About 30% of women are overweight, whereas about 40% of men are overweight. only about 25% of men are normal weight or below, and about 33% of women are normal weight or below. So there's a little bit of a sex difference there. A lot of people home in on the obese and go, oh, women are a higher rate of obesity. But if you look at overweight, you see more men are overweight. Now, I'm going to make a little excuse for us here when we say they determine whether you are overweight or obese by using your height versus your weight in something we call the BMI. And that does not take into consideration muscle mass or bone density or any of those things. And so it's possible that, some portion of those 40% of men who are deemed overweight are in fact just muscular and or have really dense bones or something like that. So I just want to finish up with that little excuse on our behalf. It might be that the BMI is not taking everything into consideration that really could contribute to health, right? If you really want to know about like fat or something like that, you have to use a different measurement. All right, let's go ahead and stop here and we'll come back in the next segment and talk about exercise. That sounds fun.